Good evening everyone and a warm welcome to the IFFT-Orange International Online Short and Documentary Film Festival. IFFT-Orange Online Short Film and Documentary Festival, jointly organized by the Orange Film Academy and IFFT, will be exhibiting around 60-62 films in the first edition. This will be a 3-day festival with competition and non-competition sessions. In addition to this, there is a retrospective on great Chilean documentary filmmaker Patricio Guzman and a country focus on Japan. In commemoration of the 100th birth anniversary of Satyajit Ray, the festival will be screening a documentary on Rabindranath Tagore made by him. Paying homage to the Czechoslovakian maestro Jiří Menzel, Checkmate, a 7-hour-long documentary made by him by Indian filmmaker Shivendra Singh Dungarpur will be screened. The festival also pays homage to one of the pioneers of Indian film and media studies, Father Gestos Robert. A documentary made on Father Gestos Robert, directed by Sri K.J. Das, will be screened in the festival. Dr. Sameshwar Gombik, author and film critic, will be talking about contribution of Father Gestos Robert. Jury Chairman P.N. Ramachandran's documentary will also be screened in a session themed jury films. The competition session has a theme, Alone Together. The festival has chosen 22 entries for the competition, in which 20 are short films and 2 are documentaries. The best film will be awarded with a cash prize of Rs 50,000 and a certificate. Second best film, Rs 25,000 and a certificate. Certificate also given to the Best Director, Best Cinematographer, Best Sound Design and Best Editing. I have the honor today to welcome our esteemed guests. We have with us T. Krishnanunni, Chairman of Orange Film Academy, renowned Director Mr. Damodar Prasad, Principal of St. Thomas College Dr. Joy K.L., Mr. C.S. Biju, the Director of Media Studies at St. Thomas College, and Mr. Cherian Joseph, Managing Trustee and CEO of Orange Film Academy. We also have with us Dr. K. Gopinathan, filmmaker and trustee of Orange Foundation, Mr. V.K. Joseph, executive member of the Kerala Chalachithra Academy, and Mr. Shivendra Singh Dungarpur, renowned filmmaker and founder of Film Heritage Foundation, and Mr. Gireeshkumar, executive director and online film festival. Thank you. I welcome you all.
Good evening, everyone. Actually, this online film festival is unique in very different ways. It has got a very varied themes, and it is paying homage to Gaston Roberts and Jiří Menzel. It's got a very different kind of films to be watched. Actually, today morning I saw Satyajit Ray's film on Rabindranath Tagore, and also I watched some competition films. I felt it's very rich in content and very unique in the way it's being presented in different venues, online venues. I think this is maybe this is very rare in Indian film festival. This festival feel like online. Of course, online film festivals are just arriving, but this is very. This has become sort of benchmark for all film festivals, online film festivals. And this is being conducted in association with Orange Film Academy also. Orange Film Academy is a new concept where we have different online courses for filmmaking. Every department of filmmaking, cinematography, editing, sound design, direction, and even film appreciation and folklore and cinema. These courses will be starting by November 1st, and the admissions are just going on. So that way, this is a sort of combination of film festival and academic activities. So I hope you all will have a very good, happy viewing of all these movies. Thank you very much. That's all.
Now we have Mr. Damodar Prasad, who is presently working as the director of EMMRC Calicut and is a noted film critic and a speaker on both the earlier and current cinemas and cultural issues. I invite you to say a few words.
Thank you, Mariam. Thank you, Krishna sir. Good evening to all. So this is in a way an historic moment. I would say historic in the sense that 6 months from the pandemic, after the pandemic lockdown, we are just only 6 months. So from today onwards, actually the unlock, the fourth unlock has started. But the pervasiveness of pandemic is still, existing. After the pandemic, all of us are compelled to, move back to home, stay at home. That was the motto. In that time, most of the human engagements, activities migrated to online platform, online sites. Many of the international renowned film festivals also announced their interest moving online. At the same time, you would know that many of the platforms, online screening platforms, also became very active. So that in that sense, even in Kerala, 1 or 2 film festivals also had their own online edition. So although this is a new venture in the history of film festivals, this will be a noted festival. The festival organized by the Orange Academy and International Film Festival of Thrissur, for 3 reasons, in particular 3 reasons. One, the kind of the packaging that we have done for the festival is very unique, as Krishnanunni sir was telling you all. The packaging, the way we scheduled, the rich diversity, the kind of representation, the representation in terms of content, narrative, and the countries. So you have a very rich representation, a diversity of representation is there. Second, in the competition, we had 2 similar festivals. I would not say similar because other festivals don't have any. I don't think they had any competition session. So this festival we have a competition session, and competition has a specific focus. And the specific focus, the theme of the festival, alone, together, which resonates the times that we live, the crisis that we are actually going through, the situation, the existential crisis that we are actually encountering. So it in a way resonates that existential sort of dilemma or a crisis, alone, together. So this is the theme of this festival, but we are not restricting this theme to the period of pandemic. No, it's a kind of universal theme, the experience of loneliness, experience of the togetherness, collectivity. So this is a universal theme experienced across generations in different way. So the films that we have got for the competition session reflects this human ethos of alone, together. So that is one thing. The third thing is that there is a certain kind of this is organized not by some this is organized not not just a kind of a film screen activity. The organization behind this festival is Orange Academy, which is into academics, which has in a very unique way they are going to start online programs in film studies, film production, film making, different areas in film making. So in that all combined together, this is a kind of very, very unique experience that we are providing. So this is the first edition of our online short film and documentary festival, and I hope that we have 2 very important sessions. Paying homage to Jerry Mansell, Dr. Shivendra Singh Dungarpur, who has done a film on a documentary on Jerry Mansell. He will be giving the inaugural talk. He will be talking about the Czechoslovakian New Wave, and also there is a session on Dr. Father Gaston Roberts, who you would all know as one of the pioneers of Indian media and film studies. So there will be a session on Gaston Roberts, a documentary made on him will be screened. Along with that, we have a talk on a tribute talk on Gaston Roberts. We have a screening of Jerry Mansell's documentary, that 7-hour long documentary directed by Shivendra Singh Dungarpur, will also be screened in a separate session. So we are also paying homage to the Chalachithra because of his 100th birth anniversary, in commemoration of his 100th birth anniversary. So we are also screening. We have already screened a documentary made by a master on another master. I mean Tagore on Rayon Tagore. So that was already screened. In the competition session, we got 22 films. 20 were short films and 2 were documentaries. So we have started screening. Tomorrow also we will be screening it in 3 consecutive days, 21, 22nd and 23rd. And I would also like to share a few things. As Krishnanunni sir also talking about the Orange Academy, there are few people who I would like to introduce to you. I mean, who have taken considerable initiate effort, who have to make this program in a way successful. One is Cherian Joseph, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Orange Academy, who has in a way ideated, had a very long deliberation discussion with how to organize this festival online with the technical person as well as the the academics and other filmmakers. So he had a very he was in discussion for last 2 months how to make it this kind of a unique venture. So Cherian, of course I would mention Cherian, who is the CEO of the Orange Academy. Then our academic council member Dr. K. Gopinathan sir, who is also a reputed filmmaker as well as a film critic, a philosopher of film. And of course Krishnanunni sir. Then Girish, who is Gireeshkumar is executive director of the films. He has been one of the central person who have been organizing this festival from day one onwards. Then the technical collaboration given by, technical support given by the ICT Academy is also to be acknowledged. ICT Academy, because they have provided considerable technical facility, technical support to us to make this very functional. And about the jury also I would like to mention, we have a 3-panel jury, and P.N. Ramendra, well-known documentary filmmaker, P.N. Ramendra is heading the jury. And along with P.N. Ramendra, we have Dega Raj, a young academic and scholar, feminist scholar, and also Aditya Shankar, who is a bilingual poet. So they are the jury members. So they are the jury members for the competition session. That will be announced towards the end of this festival. And these are the person who are involved in the festival, also with the involved in the activities of Orange Academy. So with that, I also welcome the principal of the St. Thomas College, Dr. Joy, and I also invite him to talk a few words on the festival. Mariam will introduce himself separately.
Now we have Dr. Joy, who is the principal of St. Thomas College, one of the grand and reputed colleges in Kerala. I welcome sir to speak a few words.
Good evening to all. Logadisha Aradhyaya Thrissur Corporation Mayor Srimati Ajita Jayarajan, Chalachithra Utsavam Udghadam Cheyyunna Sri Shivendra Singh Dungarpur, Orange Film Academy Chairman Sri P. Krishnanunni, Film Festival Director Sri Damodar Prasad, St. Thomas College Media Center Director Dr. C.S. Biju എന്നീ 3 ദിവസങ്ങളിലായി നടത്തുന്ന 2 വേദികളായി സംഘടിപ്പിച്ചിരിക്കുന്ന അന്താരാഷ്ട്ര ഓൺലൈൻ ഹ്രസ്വ ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററി ചലച്ചിത്രോത്സവം 2020 തൃശ്ശൂർ സെൻറ് തോമസ് കോളേജ് ഓട്ടോണമസിൻ്റെ എല്ലാവിധ ഭാവങ്ങളും ഈ അവസരത്തിൽ ഞാൻ നേരുകയാണ്. ആവിഷ്കാര സ്വാതന്ത്ര്യത്തിന്മേലുള്ള ഭരണാധികാരികളോട് കയ്യേറ്റങ്ങളുടെ യഥാർത്ഥത സിനിമകളിൽ ഒളിപ്പിച്ച ആക്ഷേപഹാസ്യങ്ങൾ കൊണ്ട് നേരിട്ട ചെക്ക് നവതരംഗ സിനിമാ പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തെ പ്രജ്വലിപ്പിച്ച മഹാരഥന്മാരിൽ പ്രഥമ ഗണനീയനാണ് വിഖ്യാത ചെക്ക് സംവിധായകൻ ജെറി മെൻസൺ. ഇന്നത്തെ ആധുനിക കാലഘട്ടത്തിൽ ചലച്ചിത്ര മാധ്യമ ലോകത്ത് നടന്നുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഭരണാധികാരികളുടെ അടിച്ചമർത്തലുകളെയും സെൻസർഷിപ്പിനെയും അതിജീവിച്ച് സമൂഹത്തിലെ നന്മയുടെ ശബ്ദമാകുവാൻ, വേദനിക്കുന്നതിൻ്റെ ഭാഗമാകുവാൻ നവചലച്ചിത്ര മാധ്യമരംഗങ്ങളിൽ പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്നവർക്ക് സാധിക്കട്ടെ എന്ന് ഈ അവസരത്തിൽ ഞാൻ ആശംസിക്കുകയാണ്. നവതരംഗ ചെക്ക് സിനിമാ പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തിൻ്റെ മഹാരഥന്മാരിൽ പ്രഥമ ഗണനീയനായ വിഖ്യാത ചെക്ക് സംവിധായകൻ ജെറി മെൻസിൻ്റെ പേരിലുള്ള ഈ വേദി ഇന്ത്യയുടെ സ്വാതന്ത്ര്യ സമര കാലഘട്ടം മുതൽ ഇന്ന് വരെ സ്വതന്ത്ര ചിന്തയും ആവിഷ്കാരത്തിനും വിളനിലമായ സെൻറ് തോമസ് കലാലയത്തിൽ ഒരുക്കിയതിന് ഓറഞ്ച് ഫിലിം അക്കാദമി ചെയർമാൻ ശ്രീ ടി കൃഷ്ണനുണ്ണിക്ക്, ചലച്ചിത്രോത്സവം ഡയറക്ടർ ശ്രീ ദാമോദർ പ്രസാദിന് പ്രത്യേകമായിട്ട് ഞാൻ നന്ദി രേഖപ്പെടുത്തുകയാണ്. ഓറഞ്ച് ഫിലിം അക്കാദമി സെൻറ് തോമസ് കോളേജുമായി സംയുക്തമായി നടത്തുന്ന ഓൺലൈൻ പ്രോഗ്രാമുകൾക്ക് നേതൃത്വം നൽകുന്ന സെൻറ് തോമസ് കോളേജ് മീഡിയ സെൻറ്റർ ഡയറക്ടർ ശ്രീ എസ് ബിജു സാറിനും അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ ടീമംഗങ്ങൾക്കും ഈ അവസരത്തിൽ ഞാൻ പ്രത്യേകം അഭിനന്ദനങ്ങളും ആശംസകളും നേരുകയാണ്. തുടർന്നും ഓറഞ്ച് ഫിലിം അക്കാദമിയുമായി ചേർന്നുകൊണ്ട് വിവിധങ്ങളായ പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങൾ നടത്തുവാനായിട്ട് സാധിക്കട്ടെ എന്ന് പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. ഇന്നിവിടെ ഉദ്ഘാടനം ചെയ്യപ്പെടുന്ന IFFT ഓറഞ്ച് ഫിലിം അക്കാദമിയുമായി സംയുക്തമായി നടത്തുന്ന ഷോർട്ട് ഫിലിം ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററി ചലച്ചിത്രോത്സവത്തിന് ഒരിക്കൽ കൂടി എല്ലാ ഭാവങ്ങളും നേർന്നുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ വാക്കുകൾ ഉപസംഹരിക്കുന്നു. നന്ദി, നമസ്കാരം.
Director of Media Studies at St. Thomas College, a close associate of Orange Film Academy and IFFT. The e-book will now be handed by to Mr. C.S. Biju by Mr. Cherian Joseph. Mr. Cherian Joseph is the Managing Trustee of the Orange Foundation and CEO of Orange Film Academy. I welcome you both on stage.
ഇതിനകം പ്രശസ്തി നേടിക്കഴിഞ്ഞ് ചലച്ചിത്രമേളയ്ക്ക് എല്ലാ അഭിവാദ്യങ്ങളും എല്ലാ ആശംസകളും.
Mr. B.K. Joseph presently adorns the position of the executive member of the Kerala Chalachithra Academy and bears the prestigious post as the secretary of the FFSI Kerala chapter. He's not here at the moment. Is a filmmaker who won awards for filmmaking, one of the trustees of Orange Foundation, currently acts as the Academic Council member of Orange Film Academy. I invite him to introduce you to Shivendra Singh Dungarpur.
Dear friends, I'm extremely happy to introduce a filmmaker, a unique contributor to the art of cinema, that is Shivendra Singh Dungarpur. His contributions to cinema doesn't only include making films, that is very unique kind of experiments in the filmmaking. Maybe all over the world, only Loud as a Filipino filmmaker will be the only filmmaker who has made this kind of long films, lengthy films, long documentaries and feature films other than Shivendra Singh Dungarpur. It is not just the length of the film he has made that make its uniqueness. The uniqueness of his films constitute the subject, the way he treats the film, the way he organizes his subject in his own unique way. And not only making films like Checkmate, In Search of Jiri Manzil, or The Immortals, a film on long documentary on the history of 100 years on history of Indian cinema, and many other films he has made. All these are a kind of deep delving into the soul of the subject that he is treating on the celluloid. In 2012, he made his first documentary, that is a celluloid man, and that was a homage, a kind of recapturing of our beloved P.K. Naik's contributions to the cinematic art, that is preservation and archival efforts of this drawing of Indian film history. Inspired by this great archivist P.K. Naik, he started an academy, a kind of a foundation of Indian heritage, cinematic heritage, and he has almost collected more than 500 films, not only Indian films, but films from all over the world, which might have lost forever unless he approached and taken care of these prints and took custody of all these films and keeping in his custody. So this is a Herculean effort done by a filmmaker that makes him very unique. He is smitten by Cherian Joseph during his studentship in FTII, and following that interest, he travelled all over Europe and met hundreds of filmmakers from Europe in order to create this epic documentary of European, not only European, but particularly focusing on the Czechoslovakian New Wave. Many of the film lovers may not be knowing that Czechoslovakian New Wave during the 50s and 70s, roughly during the 50s and 70s, had a unique place in the history of world cinema. The glamorous movements of Italian neorealism and French New Wave might have got all accolades, but Czechoslovakian New Wave during 50s and 70s also deserved a big hand to the contribution of the cinematic art world over. Defying all the censorship and all the oppressions of the then existing communist regime, dictatorship, Cherian Joseph, Milos Forman, Jan Kader, and Vera Chytilova, and many other Czechoslovakian filmmakers used all kinds of genres, absurdist humor and documentary realism, all kinds of genres to kind of subvert the oppression of the then existing regime in Czechoslovakia. And the result was an exciting history of Czechoslovakian cinematic texts which defy, or these are classic texts, school examples, school texts, how to deal with an oppressive government or how to deal with a regime which is against all kinds of freedom of expression. So using the state money, using the regime's money itself, these filmmakers of Czechoslovakian New Wave, they kind of rebelled against the existing state. That's the beauty of Czechoslovakian New Wave. So Cherian Joseph, in such, Checkmate, in such of Cherian Joseph, and few other films made by Dungarpur will be screened in this festival. And born in Patna, the state of Bihar, he moved to Doon School and then to St. Stephen's College in New Delhi, then to FTII, and there's a history of a beautiful travel, a creative travel which he followed cinema and cinema also followed him, ultimately ended up in Europe. The entire population and entire area of Europe he traveled for making this particular film, which took, mind it, 8 years. So it's an exciting journey of filmmaking, an exciting and creative journey and dedication to this cinematic art, which is represented by the person that is Shivendra Singh Dungarpur. So we have to be extremely happy, and we are proud, and I am particularly privileged to introduce this great filmmaker, archivist, consultant amongst us, and I invite Shivendra Singh Dungarpur to inaugurate this online festival.
Mr. Cherian Singh Dungarpur is a filmmaker who has won many awards in filmmaking. He is the founder of Film Heritage Foundation and has won many national film awards. Ask him to speak a few words.
All right. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to my talk. I'm Shivendra Singh Dungarpur, and I'm the filmmaker for Checkmate in Search of E.G. Menzel, which is being screened tomorrow, which is a 7-hour film. I'm going to talk a bit about why did I decide to make a film on the Czech New Wave, and what is so special about the Czech New Wave. So the story goes back that when I was studying in the Film Institute in Pune, and I was shown these wonderful films, but there was one particular film which I saw in one of the screenings on 35mm celluloid that was Closely Guarded Trains, or Closely Observed Trains, by E.G. Menzel. And I remember watching that film in the main theater of the Film Institute in Pune. And when I finished seeing that film, I had never seen a film which was talking about such a serious subject, literally about the war, about the time Czechoslovakia was in, but with such lightness, such comic timing, such as if it's like a feather falling off, you know. It was so beautiful. In fact, it was a romantic comedy. It was, at that point, I wasn't very familiar with Bauman Rabal, the great Czech writer, who was instrumental in being the source of many of the great Czech filmmakers who began to make films on his writing. But it was Menzel who sort of established himself as the foremost filmmaker on Rabal novels. So I walked out of the film, and somehow that film just stuck onto me. And then I kept watching it again and again. And I started realizing and reading about the Czech New Wave. I got so fascinated with it. We were so familiar with the French New Wave. We were familiar with the German New Wave. We were familiar with, Polish New Wave. And if you really look at the New Waves, they sort of have traveled from one country to the other. They influenced each other. For instance, a lot of people from the Czech New Wave were deeply influenced by the French New Wave. And even the Indian New Wave has a lot to do with the influence, what we got influence from the Russian New Wave, from the Czech New Wave, from the French New Wave. But my desire to meet E.G. Menzel was always there. And, when I became very successful in my career, I decided that one day I would travel all the way to Prague and try and meet E.G. Menzel if he gives me the time and allows me to meet him. And it was way back in 2010 when I finally, after trying for 8 months, I was following up with him, regularly. I got an appointment to meet him in a cafe. And that meeting, which was precisely for about half an hour, 40 minutes, was the beginning of our relationship, what went on to be a film. Because when I went initially, I never thought I would end up making a Czech film, or I'll make a film on E.G. Menzel. I just went to meet him. And I thought it'd be great if you can record it, because you really get a chance to meet filmmakers like E.G. Menzel. And the meeting took place. It was great fun. But the next day, he invited me to his house. And I think that was the beginning of what I would say the Czech new wave within me and the beginning of the film also. Now, what is so special about the Czech new wave? To understand Czech new wave, you have to understand few of the political scenarios, which, and you have to go back all the way to 1948 or just after the war, 1945. Just after the war, the communists had taken over. Czechoslovakia was ruled by the communist regime, and they had nationalized the film industry. And there was one man by the name of Otakar Vavra. Otakar Vavra was very much like a teacher. He was a great filmmaker, but he was someone who people disliked deeply because he was someone who sort of aligned himself with the regime, as they call it, and with different regimes which came into power, including the Russians, which came into power during the famous period of normalization, what we call from the Russian occupation of 1968, just after Prague Spring. So 3 key factors, I would say, led to the rise of Czech New Wave. And it was never called the New Wave. It was called the Czech Miracle. The first was, of course, like I said, the nationalization of the film industry. The second was de-Stalinization. Stalin was, Khrushchev wanted to get rid of all the issues which were dealing with Stalin. And the third, of course, was very important, was the influence of the economic and the war situation which brought in, which was very similar to what happened in France, Germany, everywhere else, that people wanted to shoot outdoor and they wanted to shoot with real actors, real feel, Movado studios. At that point, the big studio in the Czech Republic was Barrandov Studio, which produced all the films. And when the communists took over, they nationalized Barrandov Studio. So obviously what it meant is that all the films from that then on would be produced by the Barrandov Studio. And one very important event happened. In 1947, they started what is called FAMU, which is actually the film school, like the FTI. It was the film academy, the film school, where we have also had a lot of Indian students, but that's where the Czech New Wave was born. That's where they all grew up. And one of the most beautiful things about the Czech Republic is, or Czechoslovakia in those years, before the partition of Czech and Slovakia, which happened in the 90s, was that most of the professors who were teaching in FAMU were also great filmmakers. So you had people like Vavra teaching there, you had Jasny, you had František Vlachil. Vlachil is a great filmmaker. If you haven't seen his work, you've got to see his work. And this is the pre-New Wave period where you also had, filmmakers who were just trying to find a way to survive after the war. But they were really not New Wave. They were just the pre-New Wave. Films like Jumping Over Puddles Again is part of that whole circle. But it was Vavra, Otakar Vavra, who sort of found these young bunch of students. And he sort of started teaching there. A lot of people do not know that one of the teachers was a man called Milan Kundera. Milan Kundera was a film teacher before he became a writer. And he taught Jerry Menzel. He taught Vera Shitalova. And if you look at the New Wave, a lot of people feel that wasn't the New Wave from the same class of FAMU. They weren't. Jerry Menzel and Vera Shitalova were in the same class with Ivar Shom. Pavel Juracek, Jaromír Rej were from a different class. Ivan Passer was from a different class. Miloš Forman was much senior. But who was the first man to start the Czech New Wave? It was a man called Stefan Huar. Stefan Huar made a film called Sun in the Net in 1962. That is called the first New Wave film. Stefan Huar was from Bratislava. He was a Slovakian, because that time Slovakia was part of Czechoslovakia and there was no division. And Stephen Weir was sort of studying in FAMU, and he was highly influenced by Vavra and all the teachers there. And he went on to make Sun in the Net. And if you look at Sun in the Net, try and see that film. Look at the use of sound elements in that film. Look at the use of outdoor. Look at the way it's shot. And it also had an associate by the name of Grechner, who became a very important Slovakian filmmaker for years to come, and a very important figure of the Czech New Wave. Now, the Czech New Wave actually had begun in 62, 63, 64, 66, 65. I mean, you know, so Menzel had made Closely Watched Train in 66. Vera Shitulova's Daisies had come in 66. Loves of a Blonde and some of the early films of Miloš Forman had already come before that. So Miloš Forman was actually a senior person compared to Jerry Menzel. But they started meeting together to work together to make films. So what was the basic idea? Idea was that even though we had the same idealism, but we made different films, different kind of films. If you look at a Miloš Forman film, it's very different than a Jerry Menzel film. It's very different than a Ivar Shom film. Very different than a Pavel Juracek or Jaromír Rej, Jan Nemek, or a Vera Shitulova. So, unlike the French New Wave, if you look at Godard or Truffaut or any of them, the way they began, the Czech New Wave was totally different. In fact, they were not united in any way in terms of the film form. But there was a lot of political upheaval happening. And Menzel was very attracted towards Renoir's work because he had seen Days in the Life, you know, one of the early short films of Renoir. And he was very keen to make a Renoir film, and he was very influenced by another filmmaker called Martin Fritsch. And I don't want to talk too much about what Jerry is because you're going to watch the film and you're going to get an idea. But one of the major developments which took place during that time is the development of Dubček coming in. Dubček was what was called a very liberal communist. In fact, Ivan Pasa has a very lovely saying that man with a human face. That means before that, they didn't have a human face, the communist regime. So when Dubček came in, he started various reforms in the Czech Republic, and that led these filmmakers to make those films. The reforms, what is called the Prague Spring. And the Prague Spring was very short-lived. But when I talk about the Prague Spring, which is those 8 months when Dubček came to power until he was removed by the Russian occupation in 1968, there was a whole revolution of films, and all the best films came during that time. And Miloš Forman and Ivan Pasa also ran away to America after that, after having made films like Loves of a Blonde, Audition, you know, a couple of other films. Ivan Pasa made Intimate Lighting in 65, one of the most favorite films. If you haven't seen Intimate Lighting, you must see it. And they sort of left Prague and they went off to America. And later, of course, Miloš Forman went on to make Amadeus and so many big films, Taking Away and Taking Sides, and, you know, all kinds of films. He won many Oscars, the most famous one being One Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest. But there was a whole lot of filmmakers who decided to stay on in the Czech Republic. And the Russian occupation actually was quite devastating. You know, it was the most horrid period. These filmmakers whom I interacted with spoke about that after the Prague Spring, it was like worse than living in Hitler's regime. The Russians, not only, as they used to call them, Bolsheviks, the Bolsheviks not only massacred them, but took away all the rights of these filmmakers to make films. They killed some of them. Many of the filmmakers were killed. Many were not allowed to make films. Many films were censored. Many were burnt. And it was the most tragic period of the Czechoslovakian New Wave, where they were forced to make films for the state. And those films were very mediocre in that period of from nearly the 70s till the 80s. And if you look at the Czech New Wave films, so let's divide it, that before the Russian occupation, you are getting money from the communist government to make films, and you're making beautiful films. And then straight after the Russian occupation, the whole control has been taken over by the Russians. And these very famous Czech filmmakers, including Jakubisko, including Dusan Hanak, because Czech New Wave is not just 4 or 5 filmmakers. It's a bunch of 25, 30 odd filmmakers. And that is the reason when I went to meet Menzel at his house that next day, and I started talking to him about the Czech New Wave, and he started introducing me to films, one film after the other. And I have tried to put in my film, the 7 Hours film, many, many, many clips. So please do watch it, because it's a complete study of the Czech New Wave. And when I was watching all those films, I suddenly realized that in Pune, where as a student, we only knew Vera Shitilova or the Film Society movement. We knew Miloš Forman, we knew Jiří Menzel, but we didn't know the Czech New Wave. We didn't know who was Juraj Herz. We didn't know who Drahomira Vinova was. We didn't know who Jan Nemec was, who Jaromír Lirej was, Pavel Jurachev. Whole lot of filmmakers came about. And then how many survived the Russian onslaught, and the many could not survive the Russian onslaught. And finally, when the Russians left in the 90s, many could not make films anymore because the ideology had gone. You see, when you don't have an ideology, you don't have a system to fight for, your filmmaking changes. So people like Vera Shitilova had to change their style of filmmaking. And in fact, the New Wave sort of disintegrated. But what they left behind is a legacy and films, which even today, while you watch them, you have a beautiful smile. Films funded by the state, films with comic feeling, films with expression, films with talking about the state of mind, films which are individualistic, experimental. More importantly, they give you a worldview, a special worldview of the Czechs, heavily inspired by this character Švec. If you've not read Švec, you should find out who this character Švec is and how Švec handles every situation, political situation. But for Jerry Menzel, the most important figure was Bahubal Rabal, one of my favorite authors. And I was fortunate to go and spend time in his home. I never met him because he died in 1995, but I was able to travel to his village, to Kursko. Kursko is his village where he used to stay with his cats. And I was able to go through the initial drafts of what he wrote in Closely Watched Trains. And I was able to go with Jiří Menzel to the station where they shot this beautiful film, Closely Watched Trains. Mr. Jerry Menzel passed away a few days ago, maybe a week ago. I've lost a friend, and the world has lost a great filmmaker. What I've learned with him is a sense of expression, compassion, but most importantly, a great humor. Humor which is so unique to him, which you can find only in his films of Closely Watched Trains, My Sweet Little Village, Snowdrop Festivities, Larks on a String. So many films of his. And I was very fortunate that I had invited him to the Kerala Film Festival. And that was his last trip to Kerala or to anywhere out of Prague before he fell ill and he passed away this month. I think when I look at the world of the Czech New Wave, I think of these great filmmakers. and I think a lot of parallel in India, that why we could not take on the system. These were not only filmmakers, but you know what was so interesting about them is that when I spoke to them, they said, we couldn't fight the Germans. The Czechs could not fight the Germans because our army was very weak. And we couldn't fight any enemy. The only way we could fight was through humor, telling stories, humorous stories. And I thought that was the beautiful, and that is the essence of the Czech New Wave. The Czech New Wave finds its ways through every situation, through humor. The fact that the Russians were there for such a long period of time, but it was their humor. They were taking the state money and making films without the Russians really realizing, because it was all humor. And they survived that humor. And that is so beautiful about the Czech New Wave. Unlike the French New Wave, unlike the Polish or the other European New Waves. I had the opportunity of spending time with Ken Loach. And we talked about a scene in Loves of a Blonde, one of Miloš Forman's films. And when you see that film, you suddenly realize that actually Czech New Wave is about real people, normal people. They're no heroes. It's about a station master. It's about an ordinary school teacher. It's about a man living in a village. He's nobody. But taking the humor of life within it, because life has got so much of humor. And I spent every year going back. It was like my research, my thesis, my love for the Czech New Wave, to discover more films, traveling between the whole of Czech and Slovakia, discovering these filmmakers. And I was fortunate that most of the filmmakers were alive when I made my film. And I completed it in 2018. And sadly, when you look at the Czech New Wave photograph, a group photograph, which we can see today, none of them are alive. And I was fortunate to have shot with all of them. I would just like to end by saying that I'll be very happy if you watch the film. It's 7 hours, but it's got a lot of details and a lot of film clips, a lot of interviews. And I've tried to do it not like a chronological order, but I would be happy to answer any questions which you can pass on through the Orange Academy or the Orange International Online Short Documentary Film Festival. I would like to thank everyone at the festival and wishing them all the best. And for this very first inaugural session, I'm sure this festival will go from strength to strength. I want to thank the director, the committee, the members, the distinguished guests for all making it possible for this new era of online festival, which we are all trying to get used to it, because we made films with people and we wanted to show it with people. I guess maybe films will also change. You will be making it on online like this. Then it will make more sense to show it on online platforms. Thank you very much. Good night and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So over to the venue, over to the live session.
സുഹൃത്തുക്കളെ, ഈ കോവിഡ്-19 നമ്മുടെ ജീവിതത്തിൻ്റെ എല്ലാ രംഗങ്ങളെയും തളർത്തുകയോ തകർക്കുകയോ ചെയ്ത ഒരു കാലത്താണ് ഈ 3 ദിവസം നീണ്ടു നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു ഓൺലൈൻ ഷോർട്ട് ഫിലിം ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററി ഫെസ്റ്റിവൽ ഇവിടെ നടക്കുന്നത്. നമ്മൾ ഒരു പ്രതിസന്ധിയെ അതിനെ അഭിസംബോധന ചെയ്യുന്നത്, അതിനെ നേരിടുന്നത്, അതിന് കീഴ്പ്പെട്ടുകൊണ്ടല്ല, അതിനെ അതിജീവിക്കുന്നത്. അത് ഉയർത്തുന്ന വെല്ലുവിളികളുടെ ഇടയിൽ തന്നെ ചില സാധ്യതകൾ ഉയർന്നു വരുന്നതിനെ, മനുഷ്യരുടെ സർഗാത്മകതയെ, മനുഷ്യ സാംസ്കാരിക ജീവിതത്തെ, മനുഷ്യ രാഷ്ട്രീയ ജീവിതത്തെ എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ മാറ്റിത്തീർക്കാം, എങ്ങനെ പുനരാവിഷ്കരിക്കാം എന്നുള്ളതിൻ്റെ ഏറ്റവും വലിയ ഉദാഹരണമായി ഈ ഫെസ്റ്റിവലും അടയാളപ്പെടുത്തപ്പെടും. കാരണം ഈ ഫെസ്റ്റിവൽ മാത്രമല്ല, IFFT തൃശ്ശൂർ ചലച്ചിത്ര കേന്ദ്രം നടത്തുന്ന നിരവധി ഫെസ്റ്റിവലുകൾ, അതിൻ്റെ ഭാഗമായി രൂപം കൊണ്ടിട്ടുള്ള IFFT രൂപം കൊടുത്തിട്ടുള്ള ഓറഞ്ച് ഫിലിം അക്കാദമി, ചലച്ചിത്ര പഠനത്തിനുള്ള പലതരത്തിലുള്ള പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങളിലൂടെ ഈ ഓൺലൈൻ കാഴ്ചയിലൂടെ, ഓൺലൈൻ അനുഭവത്തിലൂടെ മനുഷ്യർ പുതിയൊരു കാലത്തെ നമ്മൾ അതിജീവിക്കുകയാണ്. ഈ ഫെസ്റ്റിവൽ, ഇന്ന് ആരംഭിക്കുന്ന ഈ ഫെസ്റ്റിവൽ, അത് ഉദ്ഘാടനം ചെയ്യുന്നത് തന്നെ അത് ശിവേന്ദ്ര സിംഗ് ദുർഗാർപൂർ എന്ന ഏറ്റവും പ്രശസ്തനായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററി ഡയറക്ടറാണ്. അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ സാന്നിധ്യം തന്നെ ഈ മേളയുടെ പ്രാധാന്യത്തെ ഉയർത്തിക്കാട്ടുന്നതാണ്. ഈ മേളയിൽ ഏകദേശം 60ഓളം ചിത്രങ്ങൾ പ്രദർശിപ്പിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. മത്സര വിഭാഗം ഉണ്ട്, ഫോക്കസ് ഉണ്ട്, റിട്രോണ്ട്, ഹോമേജ് ഉണ്ട്. ആ തരത്തിൽ ഇതൊരു ഫെസ്റ്റിവലിൻ്റെ പൂർണ്ണമായ സ്വഭാവമുണ്ട്. ഇതിന് ഓൺലൈനിൽ തന്നെ മനുഷ്യർ കൂടിച്ചേരുന്ന, മനുഷ്യർ ഫിസിക്കലായി കൂടിച്ചേരുന്നില്ലെങ്കിലും ഓൺലൈനിൽ വെർച്വൽ റിയാലിറ്റിയിൽ അനുഭവങ്ങൾ പങ്കുവെക്കുന്ന, പരസ്പരം കാണുന്ന, പരസ്പരം സംസാരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു അനുഭവത്തിലേക്കാണ് ഈ മേള നമ്മളെ കൊണ്ടുപോകുക. അപ്പോൾ കേരളത്തിലെ ഫിലിം സൊസൈറ്റികളും ഫിലിം സൊസൈറ്റി ഫെഡറേഷനും ഈ കാലത്ത് നിരവധി പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങൾ ഓൺലൈനിൽ ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. ഒരുപക്ഷെ മുൻകാലങ്ങളിലുള്ളതിനേക്കാൾ, ഫിസിക്കൽ ആക്ടിവിറ്റിയേക്കാൾ കൂടുതൽ ഈ വെർച്വൽ ലോകത്ത് ഈ ഫിലിം സൊസൈറ്റികൾ പ്രവർത്തിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന കാലമാണിത്. അപ്പോൾ തൃശ്ശൂർ ചെറിയാൻ ജോസഫിൻ്റെയും രാധാകൃഷ്ണൻ്റെയും ഒക്കെ നേതൃത്വത്തിൽ, നിരവധി പ്രവർത്തകരുടെ നേതൃത്വത്തിൽ വളരെ ധീരമായ പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങൾ നടക്കുകയാണ്. ഇത് ഈ ഫെസ്റ്റിവൽ, അതിൻ്റെ മത്സരത്തിൻ്റെ പ്രമേയം തന്നെ ഏകാന്തതയും കൂട്ടായ്മയും എന്നാണ്. അത് ഈ പ്രതിരോധത്തിൻ്റെ, ഈ കോവിഡ് കാലത്തിൻ്റെ പ്രതിരോധ പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങളുടെ അതിജീവനത്തിൻ്റെ അടയാളമായി രേഖപ്പെടുത്തപ്പെടും. ഈ ഫെസ്റ്റിവലിൽ ശിവേന്ദ്ര സിംഗ് ദുർഗാർപൂറിൻ്റെ അതിപ്രശസ്തമായ 7 മണിക്കൂർ ദൈർഘ്യമുള്ള ചെക്ക്മേറ്റ് എന്ന സിനിമ കാണിക്കുകയാണ്. അത് ഈയിടെ അന്തരിച്ച ജെറി മെൻസലിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള, ചെക്ക് സംവിധായകൻ, ലോക സിനിമയിലെ മാസ്റ്റർമാരിൽ ഒരാളായ ചെക്ക് സംവിധായകൻ ജെറി മെൻസലിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള 7 മണിക്കൂർ ദൈർഘ്യമുള്ള ഒരു ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററിയാണ്. ആ ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററി പ്രദർശനം ഈ ഫെസ്റ്റിവലിൻ്റെ ഏറ്റവും വലിയ ഹൈലൈറ്റാണ് കാണുന്നത്. ഈ ശിവേന്ദ്ര സിംഗ് ദുർഗാർപൂർ നേരത്തെ വളരെ ദൈർഘ്യമുള്ള 4-4.5 മണിക്കൂർ ദൈർഘ്യമുള്ള, 5 മണിക്കൂറോളം ദൈർഘ്യമുള്ള ഒരു ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററി നമ്മുടെ പ്രിയപ്പെട്ട PK നായരെക്കുറിച്ച് നിർമ്മിച്ചിരുന്നു. വളരെ വ്യത്യസ്തമായ ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററിയാണ്. അതുപോലെയാണ് ഈ ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററിയും, 7 മണിക്കൂർ ദൈർഘ്യമുള്ള ഈ ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററിയും. മാത്രമല്ല, ഈയിടെ അന്തരിച്ച ഇന്ത്യയിലെ ചലച്ചിത്ര പഠനത്തിൻ്റെ ഗുരുക്കന്മാരിൽ ഒരാളായി പരിഗണിക്കപ്പെടുന്ന ഫാദർ ഗാസ്റ്റൺ റോബേർട്ട്, അദ്ദേഹത്തിനെ കുറിച്ച് നിർമ്മിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു സിനിമയും അദ്ദേഹത്തിനുള്ള ഹോമേജായി ഈ ഫെസ്റ്റിവലിലുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ഒരു ഫെസ്റ്റിവലിൻ്റെ സകല സ്വഭാവത്തോടെയും പ്രഭാഷണങ്ങൾ, വെബിനാറുകൾ, ഓപ്പൺ ഫോറം, ന്യൂസ് ലെറ്റർ, അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ പരസ്പരം നേരിട്ട് ഫിസിക്കലി കാണുന്നില്ലെങ്കിലും സ്പർശിക്കുന്നില്ലെങ്കിലും ആളുകൾ പല സ്ഥലങ്ങളിലിരുന്ന് ഈ മേളയുടെ ഭാഗമാവുകയാണ്. നിരവധി സിനിമകൾ കാണുകയാണ്, 60ഓളം സിനിമകൾ കാണുകയാണ്. എനിക്കൊന്നൊരു മത്സര വിഭാഗത്തിൽ 27-30 സിനിമകൾ ഉണ്ടാവുമെന്ന് എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ ഈ ഒരു ഫെസ്റ്റിവലിന് മനുഷ്യരുടെ കാലത്തെ അഭിസംബോധന ചെയ്യുന്നതിന്, അഭിജീവനത്തിൻ്റെ ഒരു മന്ത്രം എന്നുള്ള നിലയിൽ, സജീവമായി ചെറുത്തുനിൽപ്പിൻ്റെ മന്ത്രം എന്നുള്ള നിലയിൽ, ഫിലിം സൊസൈറ്റികളുടെ പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങളുടെയൊക്കെ തന്നെ ഏറ്റവും അഭിമാനകരമായ ഒരു നിമിഷം എന്നുള്ള നിലയിൽ എനിക്ക് ഈ മേളയിൽ പങ്കെടുത്ത് ഇതിനെ അഭിസംബോധന ചെയ്യുന്നതിൽ, ഇതിന് ആശംസ അർപ്പിക്കുന്നതിൽ ഫിലിം സൊസൈറ്റി ഫെഡറേഷൻ്റെ ഒരു പ്രവർത്തകൻ എന്നുള്ള നിലയിൽ തീർച്ചയായും വലിയ ആഹ്ലാദമുണ്ട്. കേരളത്തിലെ തന്നെ ഏറ്റവും നന്നായി പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്ന, ഏറ്റവും ഗംഭീരമായ നിലയിൽ ഫെസ്റ്റിവൽ നടത്തുന്ന IFFT-യും അതിൻ്റെ സൊസൈറ്റികളുമൊക്കെ തന്നെ. അപ്പോൾ ഈ തരത്തിൽ വിപുലീകരിക്കപ്പെടുന്ന, പല മേഖലകളിലേക്ക് വിപുലീകരിക്കപ്പെടുന്ന, നിരവധി മനുഷ്യരെ കൂട്ടിച്ചേർക്കുന്ന, പരസ്പരം ഐക്യദാർഢ്യം പ്രഖ്യാപിക്കുന്ന, ഒരുമിച്ചിരിക്കുന്ന, അകലങ്ങളിലായിരിക്കെ തന്നെ അടുത്തായിരിക്കുന്ന ഈ അനുഭവം സൃഷ്ടിക്കുന്ന ഈ മേളയ്ക്ക് എല്ലാവിധ ആശംസകളും എൻ്റെ ഫിലിം സൊസൈറ്റി ഫെഡറേഷൻ്റെ ഭാഗത്തു നിന്നും എൻ്റെ വ്യക്തിപരമായ ഭാഗത്തു നിന്നും ആശംസകൾ അർപ്പിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് അഭിവാദനങ്ങളുടെ നന്ദി, നമസ്കാരം.
Mr. Ramchandran PN, he is an alumni of the FTII Pune and is an award-winning filmmaker, making feature films, short documentaries and TV programs in India for the past 3 decades. 9 of his short films are exhibited here. I welcome you, sir. Ms. Rekha Raj is working as an assistant professor at the School of Gandhian Thought and Development Studies at Mahatma Gandhi University. She penned a book titled Dalits 3 Idapadagal in 2015. Her areas of academic interest are extensive, with gender development, ethnic culture and Dalit and Ambedkar studies. I welcome you, ma'am. Mr. Aditya Shankar is an author of After Seeing, a collection of poems. He has founded the animation studio D3V. His animated short film has participated in international film festivals such as IDSFK. I welcome you, sir. That's our jury. Mr. B.K. Joseph presently adorns the position of executive member of the Kerala Chalachithra Academy and bears the prestigious post of the secretary of the FFSI Kerala chapter. I kindly ask you to speak a few words.
Hello. 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 Respected principal of the St. Thomas College, Mr. Joy, chairman of Orange Film Academy, Krishnanunni sir, director of EMMRC, and at the same time the festival director, Mr. Damodar Prasad ji, director of the Academic Council of Orange Film Academy, Mr. K. Gopinathan, Dr. K. Gopinathan, and CEO of Orange Film Academy, Cherian Joseph, and St. Thomas College Media Studies Center Director, Biju sir. So it is my privilege to propose vote of thanks on this occasion. So first of all, I would like to thank all the august personalities who are present here and deliver talk here, and they have presented a lot of new ideas here. It's very welcoming. And I don't know how to thank Mr. Shivendra Singh Dungarpur. He came online from such a long distance from Mumbai and he was there online from 5 o'clock onwards, and after half an hour he delivered a speech, such a long speech. So we should, I don't know how to thank him, because it was a very, it really made our festival to a very new height, really. And the other two personalities I would like to thank are Mr. K.G. Das, who did a documentary on Mr. Gaston Roberts, and the person, Dr. Mundal, who invested a big money to make a documentary on Gaston Roberts. Both of them have sent their 5 to 10 minutes talk also to us. It will be telecast tomorrow. Mr. Mundal and K.G. Das. And on behalf of Orange Film Academy, I would like to thank St. Thomas College and its media studies to give a good support to this film festival. And I could not forget ICT Academy, Srikanth sir and his team. They have given such a strong support to realize this online festival, film festival, with their sound technical support. Similarly, I have to thank all media network, including UNI and other Malayalam English news dailies. They have covered very well this festival. And I would like to say one word about Mr. Damodar Prasad. His creative support around the clock, 24 hours, and he came with new ideas about the festival. And most of the packages he created. And really a big thank to you, Damodar sir, and Cherian Joseph. His hard work round the clock, was working to realize this dream for the past many weeks, and it's really amazing. A big thanks to from my personally I thank Mr. Cherian Joseph also, and all the Orange Academy team members. They have worked overnight to set the things in right framework. Really, I thank our own team members also.
Thank you for that. Now I'll announce the inaugural films. COVID Anand, directed by P.N. Ramachandran. Neighbours, directed by Norman McLeod. Terrarium Locker Room, directed by Katsu. Mangroves by EMMRC Calicut.
Photo session.